The results of the first experiment showed statistically significant differences between the treatment and control sections for comprehension and vocabulary. ELL and non-ELL students benefited equally from the treatment plan, which means that they displayed similar statistical gains from the pre-test to the post-test. ELLs in the intervention group gained words at the same rate as non-ELLs. The results of the second experiment yielded results highly similar to results from the first study. Again, students in the treatment sections outperformed those in control sections on both the comprehension and vocabulary measures. The researchers recognized that the growth from this treatment was modest, but they suggest that instruction in general should incorporate these strategies so that students can begin cultivating their vocabulary at a younger age and result in more advanced vocabulary instruction in the middle grades. They advocate for lessons that have a shifted focus to emphasize big ideas, to give attention to vocabulary and background knowledge development, and to alter interaction patterns between teachers and students. Specifically for vocabulary, teachers should provide students with the opportunity to use new vocabulary orally and in writing. The final study I will be discussing that supports the recommendation is effects of multimedia enhanced instruction on the vocabulary of English language learners and non-English language learners in pre-kindergarten through second grade. This study progresses the use of multimedia even further than the previous study for vocabulary development. Like the previous studies, this begins with a discussion on how vocabulary knowledge greatly impacts how well students can access and understand classroom texts. This study partly rests on a theory that information that is presented verbally and non-verbally is more likely to be recalled. The goal of this study is to determine the difference in effectiveness between vocabulary intervention that utilizes multimedia enhancement and vocabulary intervention that does not utilize multimedia enhancement on elementary school students' vocabulary knowledge. The researchers accomplished this by examining 85 children across pre-kindergarten to second grade in a semi-urban school in the northeastern U.S. 8 teachers participated, and each teacher taught 2 classes, one being the multimedia group and the other being the non-multimedia group. Students were pre-tested and post-tested on their knowledge of the target words, their general vocabulary, and their knowledge of science concepts. Each teacher held 45-minute lessons 3 days a week for 12 weeks. The 12 weeks were divided into 4 cycles. Each cycle focused on the science theme of habitats. The researchers chose this theme since many teachers reported a need for more time for both science instruction and vocabulary instruction. In each of the 4 cycles, teachers used 3 books and chose 8 words from each book to be the target vocabulary words, with an additional 4 words for the overriding theme of the intervention. If you are doing the math, that is 100 new words for these students in 12 weeks. Teachers were teaching the same word, the same curriculum, but the days were structured differently between the multimedia and the non-multimedia group. The multimedia group had 3 days at the end of each cycle dedicated to showing multimedia clips. During these 3 days, the teachers in the multimedia group reviewed the words, played the video completely, then played the video again to pause and emphasize the target words, then answered questions and concluded with examples of the word used in other contexts. These 3 days and this structure of the lesson was the large difference between the 2 groups. The results of this study were distinctive from the previous studies I've discussed because the post-test reflected that non-ELLs in the multimedia group and the non-ELLs in the non-multimedia group performed equally. There was no real gain for non-ELLs with this intervention. There was, however, a measurable effect on ELLs for TVA and PPVT. The ELLs in the multimedia group outperformed the ELLs in the non-multimedia group. As for the tests on the knowledge for science concepts, all students made gains at the same rate. The researchers of this study acknowledged that the intervention did not significantly affect non-ELL children, but because ELL children did exhibit positive gains because of the intervention, there are a few suggestions for teachers. While it is not proven to be beneficial for all students, teachers of ELL students should use multimedia enhancements to augment vocabulary instruction. This is accomplished by not just showing videos, but also guiding students to notice the words in the videos and scaffolding learning by discussing words in the context of the video. The practice guide and these studies provided a lot of information on how and why to teach a set of vocabulary words intensively across several days using a variety of instructional strategies. First, I plan to implement this in my classroom by using the introduction of a new text, like an informative essay or a novel, to explicitly teach vocabulary. I can develop a set of general and content-specific vocabulary words that are used in a text, and then focus on a depth of knowledge instead of a large number of words. I can do this by teaching mastery, word association, morphology, polysemy, and closed reading, all characteristics found in these studies to improve vocabulary and reading comprehension. While teaching these skills, I will highlight the vocabulary learning strategies necessary to find out these characteristics independently. For example, when I start a unit on a nonfiction text about the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, I will pick out 8 to 10 words from the text and explicitly teach their meanings to students. An example of a target word is exist. Eventually, I will move past meaning to things like morphology and word association. For exist, students would learn existence and existing, as well as associating words like endure or survive. During this time, I will have lessons on using context clues and closed reading to find those base words and other forms that can help students to determine meaning independently. Second, I will incorporate multimedia into my lessons by finding content-related videos that use the target words in the same and different contexts. I will play the video once without interruptions, then pause the video to explicitly highlight the words as they are used in the video's context. A video about the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs should include the word extinct, and when this is spoken during the second time watching the video, I will pause the video to review the word and use small groups or graphic organizers to get students thinking about this target word. Third, I will use Spanish cognates of vocabulary words to introduce ELLs to the set of target words. In the first study, the researchers provided ELLs with the target words and their cognates before beginning the unit. I will provide ELLs with the text in both written and audio taped versions to preview in Spanish the day before the vocabulary lesson begins. Fourth, I will continue to expose my students to these target words throughout the year. I will not stop using the word exist after the lesson on dinosaurs is over. I will work this word into more lessons throughout the year because students need to encounter these words repeatedly in order to foster a depth of knowledge about the word. I will use exist in other contexts during lessons and in future texts.